Welcome to the Smart Factory webinar. This is our third episode. Thank you so much for joining in such big number. We have started this webinar series last year in September. This is the third episode already, and it's actually ensuring to see that many show interest in our episodes and topics, and register for the webinar, but also the webinar are watched afterwards, the recording. So please share with your network if you think that these are topics that need to be spread. Our aim with this webinar is to inspire you in your digitalization journey and drive change in the factory floor. And today we have a very special guest. And before I introduce you the next guest, I want to touch upon some technical issues. So if you have any issues, please write me in the chat. I will try to help you. And then if there are at the end of the presentation, we will open up for questions. So please go into the question section and leave your questions there. You can also go live and ask them live if you want so. And in the hands-out session, you will be able to download the PowerPoint presentation that Finn will be presenting. So now introducing Finn. So I will let you actually introduce yourself, but he will touch upon a very important topic, is how to drive behavioral change on the factory floor. And you, Finn, have a lot of experience also working at Emendo, but also founding Blackbird, and you have been there on the factory floor talking to everyone, and I'm sure we will learn a lot from you today.
Thank you.
So
please, if you let me. So thank you a lot. Thanks a lot for joining. I hope I can give you some information that you would like to hear. A little bit about myself. I am an engineer by training. I grew up in the pharmaceutical industry in various positions. Really liked that, and then in 2006 I founded Emendo, where we do improvements in various industries. I think as a mix, I'm a little bit of businessman, but I'm also an engineer, and my heart is in my heart I'm a production guy. So let me start with my topic. So we will discuss these issues today: why companies should change, the aspects of changing a culture, which is super difficult, data focus in the organization, and a little bit about performance management. Why do we discuss this in the first place? It is because with the digital transformation, companies that will be using their data will actually outcompete companies that are not using data. And it's really a statement, but I am confident that it's correct. If you look at companies that don't use their data at all, of course, then all the history of what happened is gone. As soon as you start to write down data into papers or Excel sheets, you can start to find the history of it. You can maybe make a Pareto chart to see what number is bigger and lower and so on. Then the next value upgrade is that the live is with live data. When the data is fresh, it's worth a lot more. So it's all the same data. It's the same data that you put on paper, but now it's live. Then later you can do signals like saying that the machine has stopped, or you can make advices to say that a machine part needs to be changed and so on. But it's all based on the same data. And companies compete to become better and better at using all of this information. And as the years will pass, the level of automation will grow. And it's impossible to grow into some of these very advanced factories if we don't have a good digital footprint. So digitalization will change the world. We need to be part of it, and that's the fundament. But when it comes to driving digital transformation, the biggest challenge is actually not the technical stuff, because I think we have that very good. We have good solutions for that. The biggest challenge is actually changing human behavior. And only this week, I had a conversation with 4 managers in a large Danish company, and they have been using tons of money for digitalization for a long time. And we were in our office to discuss actually the same topic. And what they said is, we have a lot of data, but it does not lead to improvement actions. Although there are screens and they've used all the money in the world for what they want to do, they don't manage to make any improvements. So together we brainstormed on what could be the root causes. And I also added what I've seen in the industry. So it's basically split into 3 things. So the first thing is the company culture. So if we have a culture which is not data driven, then just because we get some screens and some data collection points doesn't change that culture. It could also be that we have a management that is not so data driven, or maybe it's not so important if we don't finish today, but we finish tomorrow. And I see from the company culture, I see a big difference between those industries where the profit margin is low and those industries where the profit margin is high. If you take the brewery industry, like Royal Unibrew, which is also participating here today, the margins in the brewery industry, they are low, and you really need to be super good. So from a culture point of view, those companies where you really need to be good, they seem to move faster into digitalization than those companies that actually have very fat profit margins. So habits and culture in general makes a big difference. Then, of course, there's the leaders and staff, the competencies, the trainings. Also, maybe an issue is what's in it for me as an operator or a manager. Maybe this data will just show that I'm not really very good at my work. Maybe it can even be dangerous. And then it could also be that there's no time to make improvements. And finally, of course, there's shitty technical solutions, shitty systems that are complex to use or slow. You only get it after 20 minutes, and then probably the biggest killer of them all is if the data quality is poor. So these are issues that we need to deal with in order to make humans more interested in using digitalization. But I think most important of all, we need to work with the culture. And if you really want to change behavior or culture in a company, we need to communicate what we want. Culture is super difficult to change. But let's look at some ways to change the culture, how we change as humans. So this, the parents impacting the children. We get a lot of the culture that we have from our parents, and a little bit it's the same in the companies. If our managers are good, then they can also influence the colleagues. So this influence by other is a big deal. In the old days, culture was shared around the campfire, how to be good at hunting and so on. And again, here people discuss, they communicate about what is good and what is not good. Then there's the Bible, where values and beliefs are communicated since thousands of years, very successfully actually. And then we have the human rights, which is an indication for all countries to how to create a civilized society. These are all indications of culture. And we even have an industrial one. I'm sure many of you know the Toyota way. Toyota is one of at least the publicly few companies that have this, where you can actually read about their production culture. So to sum up this slide is, we need to communicate the culture that we want. When you want to manage culture, there's also a system for that. And again, sorry for using this example, but I think that the religion is really a very good, is good at controlling culture. So in the churches, you have texts to guide the culture. And then you have this, what I call process confirmation calendar. It's a super advanced system where you could repeatedly communicate what you actually want. And it's totally systematic. And so if you go to church, I don't, but if you do, you will actually hear the same stories at a certain point in time again and again. And this is how you institute a good culture. And I think we can apply the same methodology in the company. So we need to describe, if we want to have a good digital culture, we need to describe what are our expectations for digital behavior. Put it short in a standard, and then provide training. And here you need to start with the priests or the managers, because I think that if we don't manage to have managers that are data driven, then it's very difficult for the employees to get excited about using data and to use data to grow the company. So what I encourage you to do is to try to develop a standard for digital behavior, and then try to push it out just like the church and do process confirmation of if that behavior is being followed over time. And I'll say if you really insist that people use data more and more, if you're really successful, it will take you 3 months to a year before the organization becomes more data driven. And this is if you really focus. So it's installing a culture takes time. So how do we define this digital culture? I mean, it must be, it needs to be different from company to company. And I think when we talk about digital culture, I think we should start where you work. So it could be a workshop where you sit down with some of these colleagues and you ask them, what data do you need to do a good job? When and how will you get it? How will you use it? And what training do you need? How can we teach you how to use it? I think it's a good step. I mean, in a way, before buying any IT, any digitalization, we should sit down and ask the people, what do you really want? Maybe they don't know everything, but at least how will you use it? How do you get involved? How will you be trained? I think it's a fair it's a fair few hours to spend together with some colleagues to get an idea. Are we giving the right information, and so on? I tried to list up a few things. It's a terrible slide, and you can watch it in the download afterwards. But if we look at the operational team, I sort of listed up here, what do they do? What skills are required in the digital organization? And what is the data focus that they have when they do their job? I'll just go through the first one. So if it's the operational team on the shop floor, typically it's product and machine settings, it's in-process control and batch targets. It is alarms and warnings from the equipment. It is the target for the speeds and so on. It's the coming changeover time or the changeover we did at the start, and it's the scrap reject. And then one very important thing that digitalization can help us with is to evaluate the effect of adjustments we make to the line when we have problems. And I'm not a big fan of super many performance meetings. So I think a lot of this review of this data is something that takes place as the team is on the shop floor, and they can look at their screens either in Blackbird or other systems, or maybe the large flat screens that tracks their production. And for the technical team, it's a little bit the same. What do they need to look at here? Maybe it's more into the maintenance data, how many downtime Pareto, what kind of issues do we have there? And for the team leader, it is maybe the staff fulfillment. Did we actually have enough people on the line? Do we follow the plan, safety, and so on? The same for the support functions. Here, it's more analytical, what they need to do. And finally, for the manager, maybe they look more at trends and so on. But I think here you have a page, it's not super complicated. Try to reflect on, do you have the skills and that is in here? And are your people looking at least at some of this data? Maybe it's okay to look at less, but at least can you see a match between what you do and what you don't do? So one thing is to get the data. We also need to review the data. And as an operational excellence consultant, I think we have learned that we need to be efficient when reviewing data. And so again, I'm not a big fan of a million meetings everywhere. I think we can boil it down to 3 meetings where we in each meeting are asking, are we ahead or behind the target, and what is our biggest challenge and status on actions? So if we can ask this question in every review meeting. So one review that takes place is from the operational team, and that's just on the shop floor as the line is operating. So they just keep an eye on their tracking line and on their stops. So it's something they do all along. And if they have issues, if they're not tracking towards the targets, then they should call for help, either mechanics or logistics or managers, because these people are the most important people. So if these people are calling for help, please get up and go help them, because they're the only one really making money on the shop floor. So that's a review that takes place all the time on each line. Then I recommend you to do what we call a 24-hour back and a 24-hour forward review. So it's typically the daily morning meeting where you review, it could be plan adherence, it could be OEE1, it could be changeover times, it could be safety. And you establish some kind of a system to evaluate whether the day has been good or not. You need targets, you need visual goals for the perfect day. And you can make this in many formats. But here the concept is I explained the meeting. So 24 hours back, 20 hours forward. What can we do to keep the value stream flying at top speed? And then I recommend a weekly meeting, a trend meeting, where you trend towards the month and the year targets. And here maybe you have more time to elaborate over what are the more common problems that we have, the more long-term actions we need to do. Do we need to take an extra shift in? Do we need 1 or 2 people more? Do we need to call the external suppliers to come and help us with some issues? If you do these 3 types of reviews, I think you're in pretty good shape. Of course, it depends also on the size of the factory. If you have a lot of lines, maybe you need to split up the 24-hour review into departments and so on. I'm sure you can find the way, but this is the concept. And again here, if you're digitized, all of your people can look at the data in between the meetings, and I think they will do that. If there are problems, they will actually try to track it. Then we come back to training in the use of the digital systems, because if we have a standard, I think, to be honest, and maybe it also happens in my own company, but I think, to be honest, very often when we hire new people or new managers, we just take them into the factory and then we expose them to a million systems that they need to use from day one. And I'm not surprised that we have situations where we have installed a lot of fancy IT systems and then actually we get maybe not the best out of them. And I think it boils down to that we don't take the time to actually train people. A lot of new hires, they experience this feeling like this guy, welcome to the company, off we go. I think we need to, if we want to be successful in the digital transformation, I think we need to create the standard I talked about before. And I think we need to also discuss change management, make sure that we explain to the operators, why is it that you give in the stop course? What happens when you do that? How can it help the company? How can it help the mechanic adjust the right parameters? How can it help us find out what the best day was or the worst day? The change management, the explanation of why we do things is so important, and I really encourage you to do that. Then, of course, there are the standard things, the trainings. I personally like YouTube. I hate reading. I'm more and more becoming a video person. I like to watch videos. There's also could be show how guides, quick guides. It could also be one-on-one coaching on the shop floor. I think that's also a good. Please show me how you do it. It's you get the social effect. The concept of super users, maybe we can revitalize that, so it's not somebody who's stuck with all the problems, but actually someone who's training other colleagues. And then I think we also need to realize that if we are operating 24/7 in the factories, even around the globe, I think we also need to accept that we have to offer support for 24/7, so that the night shift becomes just as good as the day shift. So that's how we should do it. And a lot of the root causes for when we fail is because we don't do this. I've used a lot of my time already, so I just want to sum up and afterwards invite you for a few questions. So in the sum up, we have a lot of data in our equipment, in our processes in general. And those companies that manage to harvest that information, if they have a video recording of a failure, then it's so much easier for the mechanic. If we know when we have a standby on the machine, we can evaluate if we're using too much air or energy. If we know the data for rejects and so on. All of these data that we can harvest from the machine really will enhance the manufacturing process. It will give us fewer stops, it will give us higher performance, and at the end, it will give us a more healthy business, and it will keep the company smart. So we upload this to a database. It could be Blackbird or other databases, and then we can visualize in real time what actually takes place. And the real-time mindset is helping us to make adjustments faster. It helps us to react. And then some of our customers, they are really focusing on how can we make it easier for the staff to use the data. And they are inventing, let's say, summary Power BI flat screens, where the information is more personalized. It could be that when you did this workshop, I talked about the digital standard, where you say, what information does my technician really want? What do they really want? Then in the flat screen, they push the technician button, and then they get all that data. So you can personalize the data in your company, and you just do it with Power BI. So it's a Power BI, and if you don't know how to do it, we have people that can help you. But it's not so difficult if you have some young nerds in the company. So the personalization of data helps people interpret what they need. Another thing these screens will do is that when you use Power BI, you can also push that information automatically to people. So, for instance, the manager gets a report each morning in his mailbox instead of having to go in and get the systems. And finally, your performance board can also be on these flat screens. So you just push daily 24, and then the data will automatically come to the performance board. And this way you save time, and as all the information is electronic anyway, I think you will see there's benefits of not using paper. So we see that more and more, and we have very good examples, Danfoss, Eaton, people who are using Power BI to do that. And my final remark here is that it doesn't matter how much data we get. Machines cannot change themselves. People change machines. So data is worth absolutely nothing without people to make the improvements. And that's why we need to really focus on giving them a good birth into the digital factory, giving them a good chance to excel once we want them to ask, or we want to ask them to become more digital driven. We have so many things we can do to improve the chances of success. This was the content. I hope it was relevant for you. Please reach out if you want. My email is in the system somewhere. And I think now is the time for a few questions, if you have any.
Yes. There are no questions yet from the audience. Thank you for the presentation, Finn. Was great to hear your insights on this topic. I have actually prepared some topics, some questions for you. Probably you have touched upon some things in your presentation, but if you were to summarize, what is the role that technology plays in driving behavioral change on the factory floor, what would that be?
Yeah. Okay, so what I see sometimes is that it's both good and bad. But what I see is sometimes when you introduce IT solutions, it can actually help clean up the way you operate, because the system will tell you, the system is not very flexible. So I mean, there's two ways. Either you see it as very frustrating that the IT system cannot match your chaos, but you could also turn it around and see that once you have a structure, it also brings structure to your company. You know, if you use SAP for HR, then it's very structured how you should hire people. You have to write a job description and so on, and that would actually help companies not using job descriptions, right? So I think actually the digital systems can help improve the culture. But it can of course also be really painful that a system dictates how you operate. I think for Blackbird we have tried. It's most of the functions are invented by you guys out there listening to this. I can put basically in any function in Blackbird there's a customer behind it. So I think we've managed to make a system that's not telling people what to do, but to make it flexible. But I really think maybe introducing performance meetings is also a way to, let's say, introduce new habits in your company. So I think they can help foster a good culture.
Yes, thank you. And then if you were to define some metrics or KPIs that organizations should use to track the progress in implementing behavioral change, what would those be?
I think the most important parameter when using these systems is if they are helping us. And I think one element is, the key parameter for me is it helping people? Are they saving time? Because life is short, both in the factory but also in life, and systems that doesn't save time for us really should not be allowed. So it needs to help us. If we cannot truly say that this is bringing us to the next level, or if it's just a time-consuming shit system, then absolutely we shouldn't use it. So I really hope and I think when you have feedback, if something is not good for instance, in the Blackbird system, that your feedback is so appreciated to us if there's something that needs to be fixed. But my favorite gadget is the GPS in my car, because it just tells me to turn left. And this is a little bit what I want to illustrate. Why do we need to have with these Power BIs? Couldn't we chew the food for them? Why does a technician need to figure out what the biggest problem is? Couldn't he just get a message in the morning saying the biggest problem is line 7, please go down there? Yeah. All the information is in Blackbird. It's just he can look there, he can take it out in Power BI. All the information is there. So I think systems that save time, they're good.
Yes.
I think we have used up our time.
Yes, but we have actually 2 questions from the audience.
Super.
So, do you have experience how to digitalize SOPs with video or other digital tools?
Yeah. I tried to film. First of all, I'll give you a promise. We are launching in March. We are launching a maintenance module for Blackbird where you can key in, and one of the requirements is also that you can attach a link. So what you can imagine is that if your maintenance module is telling you to replace a format part or something like that, there will be a link where you can then attach a video. And then I think today videos are so easy to make with phones. In my own company, we actually invited all the colleagues to have a small training in how to make videos with phones. For the pharmaceutical industry, one of the issues is that we need to have version control and so on. So to answer to your question, yes, I have used video instructions, not in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think the best thing we can do is to make a link so that the operator will click on a link and then they see the video of how to do things. I am confident that the video will replace manuals in going forward. It's a super good question, Jesper. Thank you for that. And I'm super excited about the maintenance. It's a little stupid maintenance function, but it's super smart because it will use the production counter, so you can set up your components in there.
Super, thank you. And then how to ensure the right behavior across shifts? Can we operate 24/7 and over meetings, or?
I think the right behavior across the shift is a job also for the manager. If you know the concept of process confirmation, I think it is again the communication to come out and impact those people. And also process confirmation is when you go out and you look, is the culture like you want it to be? Is the changeover like I want it to be? Is the reporting like I want it to be? So I think as a manager, we need to go out to all the shifts and visit them and see if the behavior is like we want it. And of course, I think it makes it again. I think in many companies we are not so good at explaining what it is, what behavior we would like to have in the digital behavior. Sometimes when we have new customers in Blackbird, customers ask, well, do the operators actually key in the stop courses? Can they remember that? If you go to a company like Royal Unibrew, and the operators always keyed in. At Novo Nordisk, they always keyed in. So my experience is, as soon as you explain why do we key in the stop courses, it's because then the line will run better. Then people will do it. So it's a lot about communication, and we need to visit all the shifts.
Yes, thank you. We have plenty more questions actually.
Really, let's go on. I mean, for those of you who want to check out, that's fine. It's Friday, but I would love to answer all the questions.
We have 4 more questions.
Super.
So from Gary, these are in the chat. So from Gary Mason, so culture change is a big topic. How much work do we need to put into changing the mindset of an older workforce? So is the age factor?
I can give you a specific example. It's one of our customers. I don't know if they also participate. It's called Scandi Standard. They introduced digitalization in so it's chicken processing. They put aside as much money as they did for the system. So as much money as they invested in installing the digitalization, that much money they invested in the training of the team. So in the old, I mean, it's a super good question, Gary. I think ideally, if we made an experiment where we would describe how we want the culture in the company, and then we would build a new factory in Australia, on a green field, the likelihood that we will have a good culture is probably better in the new factory than in the old one. So I think before we start yelling at our colleagues and tell them that they don't do, we really need to describe what is it that we want them to do. And then we just have to be persistent, patient, but persistent in asking for what we want. I mean, the old factories, the old factories will remain for many years. We often see as consultants that if your factory is located near the headquarters, it's even worse. I don't know why, but if your factory is far away from the headquarters, often are more efficient and they have a better culture. It shouldn't be like that, but often it is like that. So yeah, I think we need to put in more effort than we think. We also know, I'm not wearing a smartwatch for fitness, but we also know just giving people a fitness watch doesn't change the behavior. We need the coach to come along and tell us how to exercise and so on.
Thank you. And then how much time do you allocate to problem solving on a daily basis? Soren Thompson is asking.
If we go back to the role, if I step back here a little bit, I don't know if the system can, are we still, my presentation still up? I think it depends a little bit on who we are. I think when we talk about problem solving, I think we have the containment part, and then we have the actual problem solving. So the containment part is the actions we take to allow us to keep operating. And I think for the technical team on the shop floor and the operational team, they should focus on containment to make sure that the batch is continuing. I have deliberately, if you look at the behavior, I put problem-solving skills both at the technical and at the supporting level. And I think for the support team, I think they should use 80% of their time on problem solving. For the team leader, it's still a driver. It's maybe 20% of the time. For the manager, maybe also maybe a couple of days a week. I think it's difficult to answer, but I think we can have different expectations for different people. And the closer we come to the actual manufacturing, the more people need to focus on actually keeping the line running. They really don't have. I mean, ideally, we should stop the line and fix the problem, but that's not the reality. That's not how it is in practice. I really, the Japanese, they turn the organogram upside down. I really like that. So in their mindset, we all work, everyone else work for the operational team. And when the operational team screen help, everybody else should just get up and start to help them, because this is really where we make the money. So I would, with my frustration is often with support functions, that they don't keep their eye on the ball. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think problem solving differs full-time, close to full-time for the support functions, and maybe 20% for the team leader. And for the technical teams, of course, they do almost nothing else.
Perfect. We have 3 questions from David, but I think 2 of them we will answer afterwards. Is about costs.
Cost of attack.
Yeah. And
okay, we'll reach out to David Murray afterwards. Yes.
And the CO2 footprint of OE systems.
Yeah, I can. The CO2 footprint is interesting. We actually have a campaign in Blackbird where we give you. So of course we are contributing to CO2, but in Blackbird to counteract this, we actually offer you as customers to get an energy meter free of charge if you connect it to Blackbird. And especially Danfoss, Eaton, they have done this as experiments, and they have shared the information. You can get the information from us. And especially, they focus on the standby electricity of machines. So yes, the cloud applications are using energy, but we are offering these meters for free to help you save the energy in the manufacturing side. And I think if you buy a new machine, I think just try to write in your requirement specification for the new machine that there should be a standby mode for the machine. I don't know if your machine supplier will be able to fulfill the requirement, but let's just start to write that in our equipment requirements, that the machine needs to have a standby mode, so that we can activate that standby mode when we can see that the shift is closed, or if there's a lunch break, something like that. I don't think we should shut down the PLC controllers, but it could be that we have main valve shutting off all the compressed air, whatever it is. So if you are concerned about CO2, come to us. Gas meters, energy meters, whatever meter you want to connect, to save energy in your production, it all comes into Blackbird, and we're giving the electricity meters away for free.
Yes. And then the last question from David: what are your thoughts on the translation of our personal experience of data in our private life, setting unrealistic requirements in our professional life? Because we deal with data both in the personal and professional life.
I think the main difference is that companies compete to survive. I think that's. I personally hate that my phone knows everything about me. I use it a lot, but I don't really like that it's interfering with my life. But I think the situation in a company is different because it really is the survival of the fittest. Large companies, even giant companies, large companies go bankrupt. And I can just see, where we live, if we want to keep our jobs here, if we want the industry to survive, we need to work smart.
Yeah.
So we need to work with data. I really don't think we have a choice in the Western world to have a data-driven industry. So I don't think we have a choice. I also, if you ask an operator, when people record their stop reasons, it is because the mechanics can improve the line. And a good day for an operator is when the line is just running. So I also feel and can see that data provides a better work environment. So I think at the workplace, it can be justified because it helps our work environment and it helps our companies to be justified, to be competitive, sorry. However, we should be very careful that personal data doesn't come in. For instance, people have asked us, can you do OEE by employee? And we, at the moment, not at the moment, we refuse to do that in Blackbird. We don't want to give an OEE number to an employee because it's a team effort. And really, we don't want to have personal information in the system because, it's humans. I mean, at least I don't see the value in micro measuring people in factories because factories are team events, right? It's a team effort. It's like Formula One. I mean, it's not the driver winning; it's the mechanics winning, or the team is winning, right? So I hope that answers your questions. There's a big difference between the private life and the industry, in my opinion.
Yes. We have a question from Vincent about utilizing data from sensors that can be used to indicate preventive maintenance. And yeah, we can say that, yeah, we do that, and we will get back to you with details.
Yeah, and I know Vincent, he's an operational excellence expert. We worked together for many years. So for the there's like for maintenance, that's condition monitoring, and then there's predictive maintenance. You get very far by just having condition monitoring. So, for instance, we have installed vibration sensors on CIP pumps, on feeders. We have current measurements to see if machines are using more electricity than what is normal. We have humidity temperature sensors in pharmaceutical packaging to make sure that when you have to filter paper, the humidity in the pharmaceuticals needs to be 50%. So we have a lot of these condition monitoring sensors in the system, and we can beat the behind out of every other cloud manufacturer because when we push the speed button in Blackbird, we can sample with 100 hertz per second. Nobody can do that but us. So we're actually able to make 100 measurements per second, whereas other people who deal with condition monitoring, maybe they measure every half minute. And it's also important to say when you do condition monitoring, so for instance, if you have a vibration sensor, if you don't know what's running on the line, it will vibrate differently based on what's on the line. You can imagine if it was a 33 centiliter can compared to a half liter can, it will vibrate differently. So when you do condition monitoring, when you know what batch is on the line, it makes sense. And in Blackbird, there's a full set of recipe settings where you can set up control charts for these types of sensors per product. Yeah. So Vincent, if you want to play with the sensors, give us a call and we will absolutely help you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Finn. I think this was all. If you have more questions, you can just send me an email, and I'm sure I will get the answers from Finn back to you.
Thank you.
And we'll keep tuned. We will announce the next episode soon. So we bring more topics to you regarding the smart factory.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Nice Friday.